I'm Blake Geoffrion. I love that name. I take pride in that name. I never really felt pressure. I never felt like I needed to make, I didn't want the last name on my jersey. I always took pride in it. And I always tell people I cheated genetically with my hockey heritage.
Arrière-petit-fils de Howie Morenz et petit-fils de Bernard Geoffrion, Blake possède un héritage génétique impressionnant. Un héritage qui vient toutefois avec un lot de blessures sévères, voire fatales.
Howie Morenz, my great-grandfather, the story is he suffered a broken heart, and that's how he passed away. But really what the story is, he's going on the right wing side in the old Montreal Forum, and he got hit into the boards, and his leg actually went through the boards back then. And he had to be rushed to the hospital, and he eventually died of internal bleeding. And then, my pappy, had a lot of injuries.
La plus importante blessure de Boum Boum Geoffrion survient le 28 janvier 1958. Il entre alors en contact avec un coéquipier à l'entraînement et subit une perforation de l'intestin. Geoffrion est alors opéré d'urgence et sauvé par les médecins.
And then obviously, things happen in three, they say, right? And then, my injury, so. It was turning out to be a great day. It was the year of the lockout. We were going to Montreal to put on a game for the fans because there was no NHL hockey playing that year. So my mom and dad come up for the game. I was all jacked up. Come on, right? Bell Center. All excited to play, get out there. I remember having a rough couple shifts. I had little butterflies, and I knew all the management team was there, etc. And Sylvain Lefebvre, my coach at the time, was like, "Hey, it's okay." I remember it's like it was yesterday. He came up to me and said, "Hey, it's okay. Just relax. Get out there and have fun." And like the next shift, I kid you not, next shift, I'll never forget, I was back checking. Michael Blunden was tracking down the guy. He forced a turnover from the guy. I turn up the boards quick and inside my zone. And I turn around and I come back up the ice. And I remember I took a look up and both defensemen were coming off the bench to change.
C'était un changement. Je sortais, donc j'avais un bon élan quand même quand je suis embarqué sur la glace parce que Blake patinait sur le bord de la bande du côté opposé.
So I put my head down and started skating as fast as I possibly could.
Il patinait très vite aussi. Moi qui arrivais quand même avec un bon élan.
Right at the last second, I look up. Right away, I'm like, oh man, he's right there. So I jump and try to get out of the way. Both of my legs go straight.
Bref, il y a eu contact entre moi et Blake.
Voilà Geoffrion.
I got hit. I went down.
Jean-Philippe Côté qui est allé sonner les cloches de Geoffrion.
Le fait justement que moi je tombe à genoux, ça l'a laissé traîner mon patin sur lequel il s'est fracassé le crâne.
First thought was I'm going to get up and take care of business, right?
C'est une grosse mise en échec, donc je m'attendais vraiment à ce qu'il y ait à ce qu'il y ait quelque chose qui se passe. Mike Blunden, avec qui j'ai joué par après aussi, est venu me voir, puis ça n'a pas été long qu'on s'est chamaillé un peu les deux.
I remember sitting on my knees for a second, and I'm like, oh man, this doesn't feel good. And all I remember was like this warm sensation down my back, which I figured was blood at the time, and I had really long hair. And I was like, I don't feel good, but I thought I had a concussion, and I've had a million of them, but I didn't have a concussion. I didn't. So I get up, I go to the bench, and I just start going down the tunnel to the trainer's room. I go in, and I sit down, and I'm fine. I'm cracking jokes. I'm joking around with G, and I was the trainer at the time for the Montreal Canadiens. And I sit down, and he starts looking, and he calls the doc. Starts looking on the side of my head, calls the doc over, and doc comes over, looks at it, like picks up my hair kind of thing, and like looks under my hair, and then kind of puts it back. I'm like, uh-oh, that doesn't sound good or feel good really. And he's like, get this guy to the hospital immediately. So they bring the stretcher in. I say, well, hey, G, can you call my dad at least? Like, here's his cell phone number. I give it to G. He calls my dad. Next thing you know, my mom and dad are down there. So I knew something was up then. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So they put me in the stretcher. Again, I'm cracking jokes. Me and my dad are joking around. He's like, hey, keep your head up. I'm like, Dad. So me and him start bickering, of course. So we get into the ambulance. My mom sits in the back with us. My dad's up front talking to the guy, making him laugh. I feel fine. I'm like, guys, this is a waste of time. I'm all mad because I'm missing the game in the Bell Center. My mom and dad drove up. So I'm thinking like, gosh, I feel so bad. We get into the Montreal General Hospital, and I get taken out of the ambulance, and they're wheeling me in. And the doctor that I'd seen at the rink pulls up and comes up to me and goes, hey, just want to get a CT scan. You'll be out of here in 20 minutes. The next thing I remember, and everyone knows this feeling if you've been to the hospital, the cold sensation you get when you go into a CT scan room or an MRI room. They're really cold. And I remember the doors opening, and I went in, I got really, really cold, and then and that was the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember that I was actually coherent for was I wake up, I was drugged, obviously, and I see Mr. Molson, Jeff Molson, I see Mark Bergevin, I see my mom and my dad, and my mom's for sure crying, and I think everybody else was too. And my mom was like, hey, you just need to go back to sleep, it's fine. And I think they probably turned up the medicine for me, and I went back to sleep. And then the next time I remember waking up, now my wife was there. And I'm like, all right, something's going on. And she comes sits by my bed and says, hey, I need you to stay very calm, and I need to tell you something. She's like, you suffered a really bad injury last night to your head, and you're probably never gonna play hockey again. And I didn't really think anything of it, I really was. I was like, what? I'm like, no, I'm fine. And maybe a day or two later, a couple days later, the nurse comes in and she's like, George Benson? I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that's not me. She goes, are you sure this is not room, whatever? I'm like, no, that's my room. She goes, yeah, George Benson, you took, this is what happened to you. I'm like, what is going on? And my wife, my mom and my girlfriend, now wife at the time, Caitlin, they're sitting right next to me, and they go, oh, no, yep, that's us. I turn, I'm like, what's going on? And she goes, Caitlin goes, oh, these crazy reporters won't stop coming in and trying to take pictures of you, so we had to give you an alias. I'm like, George Benson? I'm like, that's the worst day ever. Sorry if there's any George Bensons out there. I'm just like, couldn't you do something better than that? And so that was kind of funny. And then like a couple hours later, the nurse kind of comes back in. She's like, hey, we got to change your bandage. And I'm like in great spirits at the time. We got to change your bandage. And that was when it all, she took my bandage off, and I go, let me see what this thing looks like. And I give her my phone, and she turns around, and she takes a picture of my head with no bandage on, obviously, and that's when I just lost it. I knew that I was done. But at the same time, I remember having the mindset like, okay, you know what? People come back from things like this all the time. People beat cancer. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of adversity that you can overcome in this world. I'm gonna be okay. And that was my mindset. I was like, every day I'm gonna try to get better, whether it's I walk a block or whatever it might be. So from then on out, it was just every day trying to get back to playing.
Dans les jours qui suivent, je l'ai appelé, je l'ai rejoint à l'hôpital où est-ce qu'il était.
He was very nice in his message that we talked on the phone for just a couple of minutes.
Moi, mon message, c'était vraiment, c'est un examen de conscience que j'ai présentement. Là, puis d'ailleurs, pour les 10 matchs, là, je pense pas avoir donné une mise en échec. Les 10 matchs suivants, c'est pour parce que j'étais traumatisé un peu aussi, veux pas.
Everyone asked me, was it a dirty hit? No, I think it was a clean hit. I truly, honestly do. I think it was a good head check. He just caught me with the head down, and it was 1 in a billion. My helmet moved just a little bit up where his skate was able to hit that. If my helmet stays down, that doesn't happen.
Pour moi, ça a été un peu, ça a été bien dû parler, puis j'ai pu faire, c'est pas un deuil, mais c'est un peu ça dans le fond. Là.
No hard feelings at all. I was having a real hard time emotionally with just everything that had gone on, and which is all part of when you have a brain injury like that, you can go into depression pretty easily, and I wasn't going to let that happen, and I just kind of battled mentally and emotionally. And one of the things that we did, I was seeing someone for help, and he was like, hey, why don't you get a dog? And I'm like, get a dog? I'm like, I can barely take care of myself. He's like, no, it'll take your mind off it, it'll be good, And obviously we went over what kind of dog to get, whatever. So we actually ended up purchasing a dog for me to take care of, and that was my task every single day. Because after an injury happens like that, everyone goes back to work. My wife was in law school at the time, so it's kind of like, hey, it's me by myself, and the thoughts you have going through your mind is not good with that and all the things they have going on, and it was tough to do by yourself, it really was. So we bought a dog, which was the best thing I could ever do, and we named it George, in memory of George Benson, which was my alias at the hospital. It was about a year from the time it all happened till the time that I actually called Mr. Bergevin and said, hey, I got to hang him up. And we traveled around North America trying to find a doctor to let me play, or second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinions. What we ended up finding out was I didn't have to retire because of concussions. I didn't. I had to retire because I had suffered seizures, and I had suffered a fracture, a depressed skull fracture to my skull essentially. And the way they explained it to me was, if I was ever to get hit hard enough ever again, whether it was to my head or just shoulder on shoulder, I was more prone to have seizures because I'd already had them before, and you know, that was the reason why I was forced to retire. And I now work for the Columbus Blue Jackets as a pro scout and assistant general manager for their minor league team. There's a saying that I've always lived by my whole life since I was 16 years old. When I was at the National Team Development Program. My coach at the time was John Hines. He's now the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. I'll never forget, it was like one of the first things that we put up on the board when we walked in, and it's called "Adversity Only Makes You Stronger." And I've always lived by that since it just kind of really hit me. I think everybody hits adversity in their life, whether it's career-wise, family-wise, etc. And it's all about how you react to it and the mentality and the positivity you keep, you know, with your mind. I think that's what's really helped me from a mental standpoint to keep marching forward and keep going after it and keep working hard to try to win that Stanley Cup.